Good evening, Northern Colorado. This is Kilo Delta Zero Tango Yankee uniform. I will be your net control for this evening's Tech Net, sponsored by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. We're going to start off with some check-ins. Anybody care to check in, please call.
A1DEG can check in there, Joe.
Good evening, Mr. Mike. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing all right. We here. We doing good, I guess.
Almost called you this morning. It was about 4:30. I thought you might be around.
I was around, like, as always, but I think I might have been asleep at that time. I'm not sure. I can't remember what time I was awake. I know I was awake a little while last night.
Okay, well, I didn't feel that was really fair to you, so I thought I just wouldn't. Well, thank you, sir, for checking in. Anyone else care to check in for tonight's TechNet, please call.
K60TBT, Jim from Loveland.
Jim, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. Enjoying this warm weather. Not looking forward to the rain and possible snow this weekend they're saying we might get.
Yeah, but you know, this time of year it kind of, you know, it snows and it's gone within an hour or two.
Yeah, I'm just ready for summertime. Warm weather, get some stuff done outside that I've been putting off all winter.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Well, thank you, sir, for checking in. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's net, please call.
K0CBT, if you give us a chance, we could check in instead of having a conversation.
Sorry about that. What's the name?
Andrew.
Okay, Andrew. Anyone else want to check in, please call.
Rick, Big Top Canyon at
Rick, you're breaking up pretty good. Want to give me another call? I just got your name, and the rest of it was kind of blurred.
Try again here. 7KRU up the Big Thompson Canyon up at Drake.
Rick, I think I got you as N7KRU. Is that correct?
Whiskey 7, Kilo.
Whiskey 7. Okay, fine. Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate you checking in. Anyone else want to check in, please call.
KE0UFJ, Tim, HT on I-25.
Thank you much. It's Jim, right, or is it Tim?
Tango, India Mike.
Tango, India Mike. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you checking in. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's TechNet, please call.
Good evening, Joe. N0EMP, Greg, Fort Collins, with Debbie, K0DBE.
Hello, this is George, AE0GM.
Good evening, Debbie. Good evening, George. Good evening, you know.
Greg.
I'm just pulling your leg. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's Club Net? I'm sorry. Anyone want to check in for tonight's Tech Net, please call.
Alpha Echo 0 Charlie Foxtrot. Ben. Fort Collins.
Evening, Ben. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's TechNet? Please call. Kilo Delta Zero Tango Yankee uniform, net control for this evening's TechNet. We're taking check-ins. If you'd like to check in, please call.
Ski 0 Alpha Sierra Papa Terry in Berthoud.
Thank you much, Terry, for checking in. Appreciate that. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's TechNet? Please call.
This is Kilo Echo 0 Nancy Sierra X-Ray Josh North Fort Collins.
Josh, I'm sorry, you came in just a bit light. I didn't get all your call. Would you mind bringing that back again?
This is Kilo Echo 0 Nancy Sierra X-Ray Josh North Fort Collins.
I got you, KE0NSX. Thanks very much for checking in. Anyone else want to check in for tonight's TechNet? Please call. Make one more call, and then we'll start our little net here. This is KD0TYU looking for check-ins. Check-ins for the TechNet, sponsored by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. Please call.
W0 JBD checking in.
I'm sorry, I almost keyed the mic when you were there. I think I got ABD. Is that correct, or is it something else?
W0 JBD. Good evening.
W0JDD, I got that. What's the name, please?
Jack. Whiskey Juliet Victor Delta.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for all that. Anyone else want to check in? Okay, as we've said this before, check-in is not really necessary for this. We just kind of like to know who's on there and this and that. At any time, if you want to jump in with a question, a problem, or something like that, just give us a call. Just give your call sign, and we'll be good to go. Let's start out. Does anybody really have any questions or comments for the net? Call them now, please.
KRU.
You go ahead.
I'm just about to club. My son had to sign join here. I think it's been close to a week ago. And sorry about that. He paid PayPal and never has got a reply or anything.
Okay, I'll have to look here real quick. Let me see. Hang on just a quick second. I'll bring it up.
Oh, he must have got it in the last 10 minutes. I talked to him 10 minutes ago, and it still hadn't came through. And he's texting and calling like crazy is what you heard in the background. So he did finally get it. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, occasionally the people who are doing that have to work for a living, and it does take sometimes a couple days to make it happen. Do apologize for that, but I'm glad he got it. Now, does he know how to get onto the website then?
He's actually monitoring right now. He's down in Elizabeth and can't quite make the trip. He he can, sometimes he can't as far as hitting a repeat. And he was hitting the 750, but not getting it right now either. So, but he's monitoring, and he's 3 QM Rich.
Okay, if he has any questions about getting on the website, please do that. Remember, you just put in your call sign, and that doesn't make any difference what case it is. And then the temporary password is his last name in lowercase, and then it will ask you for a new passwords and this and that. And if he has any problems, get a hold of me. I'm president at NCARC.net, or Darren at treasurer at NCARC.net, and we'll get them all fixed up. And I'm sorry it took so long.
No problem, Joe. Just didn't know if it didn't go through or what. But anyway, yeah, he's got it all figured out. And, yeah, we can get on there and all of it, so it's all good. Thanks so much. Sorry I even brought it up now, but very good.
No, we've had a few people that's had problems with that, so I'm glad you did bring it up, because sometimes it's we don't get it, and that's been a little bit of a problem. And so I do appreciate anybody that comes back and says, hey, we paid a couple weeks ago or a week ago, and we haven't heard anything from you. So sometimes we didn't drop the ball. Sometimes it just didn't come through. And so I do appreciate that.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate it, too. So just monitoring here, W7RU.
You bet. Well, thank you so much for checking in. I do appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions? This is TechNet. Please call.
This is KE0, Oscar X-Ray Victor, Scott in Fort Collins, checking in.
Hey, Scott, have you got anything for the net tonight? You got to have some problems or questions, don't you?
Always got problems, Joe. But no questions. I just thought I'd check in and listen tonight.
Thank you, my friend, for checking in. I do appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions or comments for the net? Please call.
KE0 UFJ with a question.
Sure, go ahead.
New Ham, about 2 months in, I'm looking to set up a mobile rig, and not quite sure how I want to go about hooking up the antenna on a truck that I don't want to drill holes in yet. Just looking for any recommendations on some sort of, if it's magnetic or some sort of antenna for the mobile unit.
I think you got the best guy on here. EMP, go to it, Greg.
Hey, you got anything on your vehicle you can clamp an antenna to, like a luggage rack or something?
Pretty smooth on the outside. No, I've got a cap on the back, but other than that, there's it's all factory Toyota.
All right, some of these new vehicles are made out of aluminum. Is it steel or aluminum on the roof of your cab?
I used to work for Toyota, so I'm going to guess it's either an alloy or probably aluminum.
Well, do you have a bumper hitch or a receiver for a bumper hitch?
Affirmative.
You can get a hitch-mounted antenna. Of course, you'll want to extend that up above the, the higher the better. Ideally, the base of the antenna will be at least at roof level. So you can look for something you can put in there as a mount that you can attach a antenna mount to.
Roger, think you had no idea those existed. Appreciate it.
You might have to get a receiver bar and then find some type of piece of steel pipe or something to extend up or modify something. There are HF mounts that are designed to hook right on the right where the ball would be, but you want an extension to come up. Like I said, ideally at least up to the roof line, and then mount your dual band antenna on that. Your antenna is going to be for VHF, UHF, correct?
That's the intention, unless I go back for another test.
Yep.
Or drill a hole. Either way, N0 EMP. Appreciate it. Want to pay off the truck before I start drilling. All right, show back to you, N0 EMP.
I appreciate that. I'm not a big fan of drilling holes either, even though I work with guys right alongside that have taken brand new trucks and drilled a hole and this and that on them. I'm using a mag mount on an F-150. However, it's an older F-150, which is steel, and I found out that I could put it on the top and things like that. But actually, I put it in the bed, and it seems to work out fine, surprisingly enough. So. Just for a dual band. I don't think it would work for HF, but that's it. Does anybody else have any comments?
Zero ASP.
Yes, my friend Terry, go ahead.
Question for Greg N0 EMP is if he's ever used a UHF VHF antenna in the configuration he's described. It would seem that the antenna, the monopole, is a rather long way away from its ground plane counterpoise.
Well, if you have a metal bar coming up from the trailer hitch, especially on VHF, UHF, that metal bar is going to be your ground plane. You could put some radials out from it if you needed to, but I would check first. You might find that you have a pretty good match. But if not, you could stick some radials out from it for, especially for 70 centimeter, they'd be pretty short. 2 meter, they'd be about 19 inches long. But I would try it first just to see.
Comment, Papa Mike.
Ed, with your comment?
If he uses a dual band that's half wave on the 2 meter side, something like the NR770 Comet, or even better, the Larson 270 dual band, which is also half wave on VHF, he'll probably get a pretty good match. It's collinear on UHF. I've always gotten below 1.5 to 1 in odd installations on UHF as well with that particular model, AI-7PM.
Thank you for that. Any other thoughts?
AIR comment.
Go ahead, sir. Go ahead with your comment.
W0 Alpha India Romeo. Name is Jack. Mobile in Bennett. Another solution for him might be a glass mount antenna if he does not have metallic coating on the window. Not nearly as efficient as the system Greg mentioned, but it does work and you don't have to drill.
I'm curious about those glass mounts. I've only known one person that's used it, and I never heard how well it worked. Is that a through the glass type connection?
Right now in my mobile, getting into the repeater from Bennett, so it demonstrates the glass. It just has capacitor points on each side of the glass that are glued. You can remove it if you change vehicles or don't like it, and the glass is not damaged at all.
It connection through the glass? I guess I'm asking that question.
There's nothing that penetrates through the glass, but the RF connection goes through the glass. So the antenna is on the outside, and the coax connects to a capacity plate on the inside.
Okay, so there's really, and you were kind of breaking up there a little bit, but there's no physical connection between the antenna and the actual coax. Am I reading that right?
That is correct.
Is that a very expensive antenna?
We'll say that W0ASP has seen my installation, so he could probably explain it better.
Terry, tell me all about this. W0ASP?
W2MIC.
Okay, Mark, can you explain it?
Sure. If you put a metal plate and a sandwich in a piece of glass and a second metal plate, you have built literally a capacitor. The glass is acting as the dielectric, and you can send the signal, AC, through one plate on the capacitor and to the other plate. And what you are doing is sending AC through the glass. It's not optimum. A wire would be much better, but it absolutely does work. And at the relatively low power levels of ham radio for mobile use, like a handheld driving or maybe a 50-watt mobile, it works. It's very effective, works perfectly well, very practical. And for people whose cars are physically and mechanically constrained, I have several friends who lease cars, and they're not allowed to drill anything anywhere, and they use the glass, through the glass antennas. They work. You're losing a few dB in each direction, but with given that we live in repeater heaven here, I don't think he will notice the difference at all versus a wired antenna. Yep, highly recommended. They work.
That's interesting. Are they expensive?
Basically what they are is a metal, from your radio, a piece of coax that goes up to a little piece of metal, maybe 1 or 2 inches in diameter, with a adhesive. And it used to be really tacky, terrible adhesives, and these days it's good 3M command stuff, so you can take it off and not have a terrible time with a scraper. And then on the far side, on the outside, you have a second piece of metal, probably 1-2 inches in diameter, and a pivot mount and an antenna, maybe, I've seen anywhere from 6 to 18 inches long. And they work just fine. If you were out in the middle of, the desert in Reno or something, they might not work so well. But because we have such really, really good repeater coverage here, I run an antenna on top of my Suburban that's less than a foot long, and I can talk to everything on half a watt. So it's just literally, it's a capacitor. And you can put them anywhere. Some people like them on the front window. I like them better on the back window because I prefer to have the radiating antenna not near me. But they will, in fact, work on side windows or the old, what I'm trying to think of here, the triangular windows that older cars had that you could open part way for ventilation. They work on windshields. I tend to go for the back window because the windshields tend to have metallic tinting.
That's interesting. I guess that would make a difference, the metallic tinting, wouldn't it?
significant.
That's very interesting. Any other comments or questions?
KD0QBM Michael in Windsor checking in, and I got a question.
Michael, my friend, go right ahead.
Well, since we're on the subject of mobile antennas, I just bought a new F-150 all-aluminum body vehicle, and my idea was to buy one of these all-steel crossover toolboxes for the bed and put the antenna on top of the lid of the toolbox. I was wondering how good that would work.
EMP.
Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, if you have an open bed and you don't have a shell, camper shell, if you have a pickup with an open bed and you either put a metallic toolbox across the back or you put a roll bar in the back, and some roll bars already have a nice welded tab on them that's meant for mounting a floodlight, but an antenna mounts there just fine. If you do either one of those things, that'll work just fine.
MIC.
Good, Mark.
Yep, a steel toolbox will work like gangbusters. I have run lots of experiments running magnetic mount dual band VHF, UHF antennas on top of small metal tables, file cabinets, washing machines, dryers, refrigerators, freezers, more than a couple of feet on the side and you're in really good shape. And so a toolbox wide enough on basically you're talking, I'm sure, a 4x8 or a 4x6 bed. 4-foot wide toolbox with 1.5 or 2 feet in depth, in breadth, would work absolutely gangbusters. You bet.
Yeah, that was my idea. I was thinking it'd work, yeah. I was going to just I got a mag mount, and I was just going to stick it kind of in the center, so, you know, when I have to open the box, I can just take the antenna off. But I just wanted to make sure that would work.
I guarantee it will. Back to net.
Thank you much.
Well, Michael, I do appreciate you asking that question. I really do, because I have a friend of mine that bought, last year I guess it was, bought the $70,000 F-150 and this and that, and got his mag mount and put it on top of the truck, and then took off and watched it drag behind him. So he forgot that they were aluminum. I had to laugh at that. Any other comments? Any questions? Okay, our topic for tonight, surprisingly enough, is antennas, and I was just leaving it up to anybody who happened to have one. I do know we have a group of new people that have come in within the last 6 months that are trying to set up base units and things like that. And Mark, I know, and Greg, I know that you guys have worked with these people and done a tremendous job. Do either one of you or both of you have suggestions for the new folks that's trying to set up, say, a base unit?
Greg, go first.
It was a club email, so at least it was club related, and my right brain won out over my left brain.
Okay, in that case, I'll go first. For a home base station, but since the progression that pretty much everybody follows is to get a handheld, and how do you make a handheld into a base station? Well, there's a really clever little antenna called an N9TAX. That's November 9 Tango Alpha X-ray, and I'll repeat that a few more times in the coming minutes. It is a Slim Jim design. It is a dual band VHF UHF antenna. about 5.5 or 6 feet long. It rolls up into a coil, and I can comfortably carry one in the cargo pants pocket of my cargo pants. And it has about 6 dB of gain. So for those of you who are new to decibels and dB, 3 dB is a doubling, 6 dB is a doubling of a doubling, or a 4-fold increase in effective radiated power. With a 5-watt handheld, that means you have an effective radiated power of 20 watts, which will get you to Denver no sweat. You can hang it inside the house from a ceiling or a curtain rod. You can hang it from a tree. I have a 21-foot extending fiberglass fishing pole that I use with mine to get it up in the air. If you get on Google and go search for N9TAX, November 9, Tango Alpha X-ray, you will be taken to the manufacturer's site. Use one guy. In my experience, and the shipped cost I think is $33. In my experience, he gets it to me within 3 working days, and I've ordered several over time. I keep one at home. I keep one in my vehicle. I keep one in my radio spares box. It works extremely well. It turns your handheld into a base station, and if and when you get a higher power radio, like a 50-watt mobile, to use as your home base station, it works with that as well. Back to net.
Just a question about that, Mark. How much power will that thing really take?
I will pull up the website and look. I'm pretty certain it takes at least 50 watts. I think it's 100. Give me a few moments to check.
Okay. While you're checking, Greg, do you have any comments? What the question was is that I've had, and you've had this also, folks who are brand new in the hobby are thinking about getting a radio, but they're more interested in what kind of antenna they should have for a base unit. What's your recommendations?
Okay, I'm going to assume we're talking VHF, UHF dual band, because we're probably talking about a technician. If you don't have an HOA, or if you have a HOA that will approve a base station outdoor antenna, one either on the roof or on something at least as high as your roof is ideal. And if you have an outside antenna, you're going to want a nice 8-foot ground rod and a heavy conductor going down to that ground rod for lightning protection. Arrow, A-R-R-O-W, Arrow Antennas up in Cheyenne makes a real nice dual band J-pole that works very well. I helped somebody set one up outside, and their HOA actually approved it after the design committee looked at it. They said, okay, in the backyard. And those work very well. I'm going to let this reset. If your HOA won't let you put it outside, but you have an attic and you do not have a metal roof, you have regular plywood and shingles and tar paper, you can put that same antenna in your attic if your attic is high enough. It's about a 5-foot high antenna. So if you can stand up in your attic, you can stick that in the attic and it will work quite well. Barring that, you're gonna, if you don't have an attic or you have a steel roof, you can't put something outside, that's obviously an antenna. Then you want to start looking at stealth antennas, like there are dual band antennas you can find that are disguised as a roof vent pipe that you could put in. So that'd be the route you'd want to go. But ideally you want it outside or as high as you can get it. And 0 EMP.
Mark, did you happen to find that?
Not yet, Joe. still digging. I will comment that I have run my N9TAX antennas off of my Kenwood TMV71A at 50 watts on both VHF and UHF with no issues and no damage, but let me keep looking here.
I guess I have a question for either one of you or anybody else who wants to enter this. Generally, you brought up a very good point, Greg, about HOAs, and I would say that 50 to 70% of the people that we talk to have that issue. So what do they do?
Under current federal law, as I understand it, I'm not an attorney, and I didn't sleep in a Holiday Inn last night or whatever the commercial is, but my understanding is you can have a roof-mounted television antenna for over-the-air TV, and HOAs can't stop you from doing that. If you get a log periodic antenna, like one from Create, that will work on both bands, or maybe Elk Antennas has a dual band log periodic beam antenna. They look a lot like a TV antenna, and they'll actually work reasonably well to receive over-the-air TV. And you can put one of those on your roof, and you can even hook it up to a TV and do a channel scan and invite the HOA president over to see that it's a TV antenna. And after she leaves, you can reroute the coax to your ham rig and check the SWR, and you'll probably be okay. That's one thing you can do.
I see.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes, I found the specification. The N9TAX dual band VHF UHF antenna will handle in excess of 100 watts for the manufacturer.
Well, as you say, this is KD0TYU for ID. As you say, with us being repeater rich, if you will, and where they're positioned, I don't know of anybody that's got more than 50 watts. And the only time I have ever used 50 watts, I'm being honest with everyone out there, and every radio that I have that's a mobile, of course, is 50 to 45 watts that we're using in the truck. The only time I've ever used anything more than 5 watts is when we had a big rainstorm, when we had that tornado come through Berthoud, and I was actually doing Skywarn for that out there, and I was trying to get through an awful lot of weather, and then I need a little bit more power, but other than that, I haven't needed anything else.
I concur. I picked up my 50-watt mobiles at the recommendation of WB0MH, who told me that when it is raining cats and dogs and your windshield wipers can't keep up, you will need 50 watts to punch through the rain to get to the repeaters. That is true. The rest of the time, I run on anywhere between half a watt and 3 watts, and I can talk to anything and everything everywhere.
I tend to agree with that, because that was only once, and generally when I'm doing Skywarn stuff, I don't even look. It's just running on low power, which I'm assuming with the 71A is around 5 to 7 watts, and I'm just guessing at that. I know the 8800's about that, and I'm assuming the 400 is too. But anyway, I don't know of anybody that really needs anything. But you do need a little bit to punch through that weather. Anybody else have any comments about base antennas?
W7KRU question.
KRU, go ahead.
Yeah, I got a question. I'm up here at Drake and Big Thompson with a big mountain on both sides of me, and I wonder if anybody's got any ideas for maybe something I could do better, which I've got a collinear VHF base station a tram antenna up, and I've got the tip of it's probably 60 foot off the ground up on ups, guide out and everything, and at times, a lot of times I still have a problem hitting repeat from up here. Is there a better antenna, is it possible you're too high? Any comments on that?
EMP.
Greg, you have the floor. Go ahead.
If you can borrow a 70 centimeter Yagi antenna from a ham, don't go out and buy one yet because this might not work, but if you can borrow one to experiment with and actually point it at the mountain south of you, it might backscatter off that mountain back to the 275. That may work for you. Be worth trying.
Okay, I do have, and I tried, which I didn't get it up high, a beam. I was looking here and tell you what it is. It's a 2 meter, 70 centimeter, and it wasn't near as high or anything, and it didn't do as well as the ground plane, so I actually took that back down.
Okay, did you try it pointing south, though, or are you trying to point directly at this repeater?
I had it on a rotor and everything, so and actually I guess that is just a 2 meter. It's a Cushcraft A14810S, so I was trying for 2 meters that time. So, but I did have it on a rotor and everything, and I think I tried about all directions, but that wouldn't have been this repeater anyway, so.
Well, we do have our 115 repeater at the same site, so you could try that antenna on the 115 just to see how it does. But get a hold of a 70 centimeter beam from somebody and try that and see if you can fish around and find a spot where you get a bounce back to this repeater. Might be worth trying. And 0 EMP.
Okay, I'll give that a try. I forgot what I was going to say now, but I'll give that a shot because the 2 meter didn't help me out on that one, so I will try that. Thank you very much. W7KRU.
Mark, I don't know if you remember Rick. Didn't Rick build some sort of deal like that for 70 centimeters?
Rick built a number of antennas, including a discone. I think what you're thinking of is Jay's brother down in Denver running a 13-element Cushcraft UHF beam and happily talking to this repeater from way down in Denver on anywhere between 1 and 5 watts.
Yeah, that's it. Greg, do you think something like that would work?
He's going to need to run a lot of power if he's bouncing off granite to hit a repeater. He's going to want, ideally, 50 watts if he's got a radio that'll do it. And that's like a starting point. So he wants a good beam and try to find a spot that works, something to aim at that will bounce back and hit this repeater. But he's going to need to run power.
I'm running 50 watts, and I don't know how well I'm hitting if I'm full quieting now, but at times I can keep any audio, and so it changes a lot. Running 50 watts, got the antenna way up there, but I'm right here at Drake, so I'm literally down in the valley, other than to the east, and the west opens just a little bit, but Crozier's right there to the west, and north and south is just huge mountains. So I think the idea, like you say, is to be able to try to bounce off something maybe. And 1.5 I seem to consistently, although not much, didn't seem a lot going on, but it seems like I always hit it real well.
I need to ask you, what radio are you running right now?
FT991A.
Greg, would you like to talk to him? He seems to have the same problem that all the 991s are having today.
Yeah, we're having a problem with this repeater where if you're overdriving the audio on UHF, it makes it interferes with the subaudible tone that's needed to get into this repeater, and there's little like quarter-second dropouts in your audio. And Joe's right, it sounds like this is happening to you. And if you could try backing away from the microphone and or going into your menus and turning down your mic gain for this band, that's the fix for that. N0EMP.
Okay, I turned the gain down. I am running a desk mic, an old Turner Super Sidekick, which is basically for the HF, and I don't switch back to the hand mic and all. I turned the gain down on it, on the mic. Quit it, Rich. That's my son texted me. He's on the air here too, so did that help at all?
Yeah, that helped a lot. You're solid into the repeater now. There's a little bit of hiss, but I mean, just a tiny bit. Given where you're at and the obstacles that you're having to overcome to get in, you're doing just fine now.
Okay, great. Well, I really appreciate all this, and I remember to turn this mic gain down and stuff when I'm on here, and I've got some checks on HF, seems to be doing pretty good. Turned up, whatever. But all right, appreciate all the information. I won't take any more time. W7KRU.
I do appreciate that, Greg, doing that. Your W7ARQ, absolutely, that changed it from night to day. And this is not on your problem. This is on our end. We thought it was just the Chinese radios that were causing problems. Unfortunately, surprising enough, it wasn't the Bofang handheld. It was the and then all of a sudden we saw some Yaesus that were doing it. And the 991 was one of the ones that we noticed first because we have a friend that has one over in Greeley. And all you did was turn it down a bit, and it really makes a tremendous difference. Yeah, you're solid in there now.
Great, you guys are awesome. Okay, yeah, I don't even think about this control on the microphone itself. I know I've got the radio set at about 35, so I'm sure that was a big part of it. Well, thanks so much. Everything should be so easy, right?
Well, this wasn't when it first started. James was tearing his hair out, and he found this out. And all it is just that. This is on our end. It's the way that the repeater sees the tone control. So this is actually on our end, and there's really not much we can do except help the people that are out there transmit on the thing. So it's our fault, but thank you.
All right, thank you guys. W7KRU, I'll be monitoring.
Thank you much. Does anybody else have any ideas or anything else about maybe how high an antenna should be if they're doing it, or any particular one that they like? Call now. Terry, you've put up antennas all over the world. What's your opinion on this?
W0ASP. Well, I've actually learned from Mark, W2MIC, with antennas that bigger is better, and higher is better, and higher is better than bigger. And that may sound flippant, but it's actually very good advice.
Gary, you make me proud.
Well, you would make me proud too, but I don't understand.
And I will explain. In general, the amount of gain or signal focusing what we call directivity, is proportional to the size of an antenna. So if you have a little tiny rubber ducky off your handheld, you have an antenna that's a much smaller than a wavelength antenna. You have very little directivity. When you put a half wavelength antenna up, you have about a 1.3 dB gain. If, for example, you had a lot of money and you could put up a 100-foot dish and point it wherever you want, you might be able to achieve 40 or so dB gain or directivity on your signal. So that's the bigger part.
Okay, that makes sense. So what you're basically saying is that if I've got a standard antenna and I stick it up higher, I'll actually do better than if I go out and buy a more gain antenna, say, and put it down lower, correct?
No, Joe, I think that's backwards. The higher part is that, in general, we're always trying to get over obstacles. And one of the biggest obstacles we have is the curvature of the Earth. So our radio waves propagate in straight lines, but the Earth is in fact curved, not exactly flat. And so if you want to get further and further out with the same antenna, the higher you put it, the better it will work.
Well, I do notice we've been in areas been buying an awful lot of X50s, and I've never actually used an X50. However, people I'm talking to probably on the radio now, everybody's dealing with an X50. The only thing I've used as far as diamond goes is, of course, the 510, which I've had for years, and it's sticking up there a ways. It's probably, it's at least 15, if not 20 feet high, over the house, of course. And it gets out, but you got to remember, with the repeater, it's like I could throw a rock and hit it, probably. But I threw real hard, though. So, but the gain on the 510 is, I think, 11 and 8, where I don't think the X50 is quite that much. But I do think, considering where we're trying to hit repeaters, I don't know if it really makes that much difference, does it?
Well, in my opinion, once you start getting an antenna for UHF and VHF that's about 3 or 4 feet tall, and dual band antennas may have an inductor or so, they're getting a couple of wavelengths in length, and they're getting into the 5 to 10 dB gain, and generally that's adequate. You have to work pretty hard to get a directivity or a gain higher than that. So the next choice for getting better connectivity is to get it up.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. As far as I've had really good luck with. I've got a Comet 3300, I think it is out there, only because it's a tri-band. But then I've got this one too. Does anybody else have any comments about antennas and things like that?
MIC.
Go right ahead, Mark. You have the floor.
Thank you, Joe. I will embellish a little bit on what Terry said. I've done all kinds of experimentation with antennas at ground level, up a little bit, up a lot, and what I can clearly say is if you're trying to transmit through a house, your neighbor's house, etc., you're losing a lot of signal. In my case, my house is brick, and radio signals don't like going through brick. Houses have house wiring, which are, of course, antennas, and will interfere with or soak up your signal. These days, your insulation package contains an aluminized mylar reflective sheet, and that, of course, is radio opaque. So in my experiments, what I found is if you can get your antenna up, get the base of your antenna up above your own roof line, and everything gets dramatically better because houses are not friendly to radio signals, And roofs, at least modern ones, have that aluminized mylar and roofing nails. And roofing nails will suck up radio signals. Best is to get above not only your own roof, but the highest roof of anybody around you. Once you get above them, you're picking up probably 10 dB of effective signal, maybe more, or 10-fold, 10x. And you can hit anything from the repeaters on top of Horsetooth to the repeaters down in Squaw Mountain in Denver to some of the repeaters on top of buildings in Denver, and you can do it with 1 or 2 watts. So I'm the originator of the statement that bigger is better than smaller. A bigger antenna does work better than a smaller antenna, and there's something called effective capture area. And a higher antenna works better than a lower antenna, because when you're down low, you're into ground clutter, you're trying to transmit through houses, you may be trying to transmit through a steel or a metal-bodied car. And so if you can get a little antenna up higher, way high, that will work better than a really big, really good antenna down low. And it turns out to be typically cheaper to get a little antenna up high than it is to get a really big antenna down low. If you have a 100-foot tower and a great big antenna, that's really great, but most of us are working on a much more limited budget than that. So getting a 20-foot pole up there and getting your vertical antenna on top of that gets you up over the roofs of the 2-story houses around you, and at least in residential Loveland, Fort Collins, etc., that's pretty much the limit. Get something up on top of your own roof. The X50, that's X-ray 50 antenna. And is quite affordable. So get whatever antenna you have. Start with an X50 because they're cheap and they work great. And Joe, I think there's a Workman equivalent, as I recall. And then get that up as high as you can, a 20-foot piece of conduit. Okay, back to net.
Comment, please.
Go ahead with your comment.
W0LEV here. Yeah, as high as possible, but consider feed line loss. If you're using RG58 on 450, you shouldn't be. Consider feed line loss. There is a reasonable trade-off. Been there, done that with a few friends. W0LEV.
Mark, part of your comments got cut off. I don't know if the repeater timed out or whatever, but you came back. Did you not cue the mic, or was it on our end?
My radio timed out. Sorry about that. I need to dive into the settings and set my radio up to the 3-minute limit that NCARC uses. Apologies.
And thank you for your comments, Dave. I didn't thank you for that.
No problem. I had an experience once where, this is out on the left coast, where someone took that to the limit. He had several 100-foot towers, deep pockets to say the least. He put his 2-meter antenna up at 150 feet. Didn't work too well. He was using RG8. Still, 150 feet of RG8 is lossy on 450. Didn't work too well. Anyhow, it's a trade-off between height and feed line loss, especially here on 450. W0LEV.
Any other comments or questions? Well, I think we've covered an awful lot here in this last hour. I do appreciate everybody's input on this thing, and if you look on the website, there is should be what I don't know what Steve's doing next week. I haven't looked at the website in a couple days, so whatever he's going to do next week, but he will be your MC for this here thing. But I'd like to thank every one of you for coming in and this and expressing their opinion. And remember, we will start again next week at 6 o'clock sharp, and we will have a topic of some sort. And remember, the topics are only secondary. They're things that the net control will go back on if they need to. But this is your net, and if you have any questions, comments, or just want to say something about about where's my membership, that's absolutely fine. We'll check it out for you. So 73's to you all, and the repeater's open for general use. Everybody have a great week. TYU clear.
This presentation was brought to you by the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Club. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.